February 4th, 1945, 6:23 a.m. RAF Thorpe, Abbotts, England. The ground crew chief is making his morning rounds when he notices something wrong with B-17 number 337716, tail marking Q Queen. The bomber sits on its hardstand exactly where it should be, but nobody moved it there last night. Nobody logged its return. And when Chief Master Sergeant Donald Wright climbs up to check the cockpit, he finds something that makes his blood stop cold. The pilot's seat is empty. Co-pilot's seat empty. Every crew position throughout the entire aircraft empty. Not abandoned, empty. Like the crew simply ceased to exist mid-flight. The engines are cold. Fuel tanks reading 1/8 full. But the most disturbing detail? The intercom system is still on. Wright puts on a headset, static, and underneath the static, something else, a voice, faint, repeating the same transmission over and over. Queen to base, experiencing crew incapacitation, requesting immediate. Then, nothing, just static. The recording loop playing on the automatic system over and over, a ghost transmission from a crew that vanished. I'm Corporal James Mander, radio operator. I was supposed to be on that flight, would have been on that flight, except for a decision I made 18 hours earlier that saved my life and haunted me for the next 80 years. This is the story of how Q Queen flew home alone, how 9 men disappeared. And how the chain of command, stretched too thin and moving too fast, created gaps where the impossible could happen. February 3rd, 1945, 1847 hours. 22 hours before Q Queen's empty return. I'm in the communications hut going over mission briefing materials for tomorrow's operation. The target is a marshalling yard at Magdeburg, deep penetration into Germany, high risk. The mission commander is Major Robert Kellerman. Good officer, experienced, but visibly exhausted. He's been flying missions back-to-back for 3 weeks because we're short on command pilots. Half our squadron leaders are grounded with combat fatigue. The other half are dead. Kellerman is holding things together through sheer will. During the briefing, he goes over radio procedures. Standard stuff. Except he mentions something new. A modification to emergency protocols. If your aircraft experiences catastrophic communication failure and crew casualties exceed 50%, engage autopilot, set heading for home, and evacuate remaining crew via parachute. The aircraft will attempt automatic return to base using the new AN/APN-9 navigation system. This is new. The AN/APN-9 is experimental, automatic navigation, supposed to guide damaged bombers home without pilot input. It's been tested exactly 3 times. 2 successes, 1 failure, where the bomber flew into a mountain. But command wants it fielded immediately. War's almost over. They need every advantage. I raise my hand.
Sir, what's the procedure if the AN/APN-9 malfunctions during automatic return? Kellerman pauses, looks at his briefing notes. Good question, Corporal. The manual says... He flips through pages, can't find it. The manual says to maintain radio contact with base and follow verbal guidance. But if radio is compromised, the system should self-correct. Should. That word hangs in the air. Nobody likes should when it comes to flying over Germany. But nobody argues. We're all too tired, too close to the end. Just get through one more mission, then another. Then maybe the war ends and we go home. After the briefing, I approach the base communications officer, Captain Dennis Ward. Sir, about the AN/APN-9 system, has anyone actually tested the radio integration, the automatic protocols? Ward looks uncomfortable. Corporal, that's above your clearance. The system has been approved for operational use. Your job is to operate radios, not question engineering decisions. Yes, sir, but if something goes wrong tomorrow... Nothing will go wrong. Dismissed. I walk back to my barracks thinking about protocol, about the fact that we're implementing new systems without complete testing because the pressure from higher command is relentless. Push forward, maintain tempo, win the war. Nobody wants to be the officer who slows things down by asking for more tests, more time, more caution. That's how you get relieved of command. So everyone pushes forward, and gaps appear. Little gaps, procedural gaps, communication gaps, and sometimes those gaps swallow people whole. That night I can't sleep. Something feels wrong. I've flown 32 missions, developed an instinct for when things are off, and tomorrow feels off. At 0200 hours I make a decision. I go to the base hospital, tell the medic I'm feeling sick, dizzy, might be flu. The medic checks me. No fever, no obvious symptoms, but he's exhausted too. Doesn't want to argue. Grounds me for 24 hours. Rest, report back tomorrow night. If you're clear, you fly the next day. I feel guilty. This is borderline malingering, but the instinct is screaming, don't fly tomorrow. So I don't. February 4th, 0545 hours. Q Queen takes off without me. Replacement radio operator is Corporal Stephen Mitchell. Good kid, 19 years old, from Iowa. His first mission was 3 weeks ago. He's eager, wants to prove himself. The crew, pilot First Lieutenant Marcus Reynolds, 25, Texas, 58 missions, one of our most experienced pilots. Co-pilot Second Lieutenant Alan Foster, 23, California, 30 missions. Navigator Second Lieutenant William Porter. Bombardier Second Lieutenant Frank Harrison. Engineer Technical Sergeant Robert Hayes. Ball turret gunner Staff Sergeant Donald Gray. 2 waist gunners, tail gunner, and Mitchell on radio. 10 men total. Q Queen joins the formation. 60 bombers heading east. Standard mission profile, except nothing about today is standard. Because it's 6:23 hours, while the formation is assembling over the English Channel, I'm in the communications hut monitoring radio traffic, and I hear something that makes my stomach drop. Mitchell's voice. Base, this is Q Queen. We're experiencing intermittent electrical issues. Number 3 engine instruments flickering, radio cutting in and out. Captain Ward, monitoring from base, responds, Q Queen, can you maintain formation? Affirmative, base. Pilot says we're good to continue. Acknowledged. Monitor your systems. Report any deterioration. The formation proceeds. I'm listening to all aircraft check-in. Everything nominal. Until 0847 hours. Mitchell's voice again. More urgent now. Base, Q Queen. Electrical failure spreading. We've lost number 3 engine instruments completely. Number 2 engine running rough. Radio function degraded. Major Kellerman's voice cuts in from the lead aircraft. Q Queen, this is lead. What's your status? Reynolds responds, Lead, Q Queen. We can maintain formation, but recommend we consider abort and return to base. There's a pause. I can almost hear Kellerman thinking, trying to decide. He's already down 3 aircraft from the original mission roster, mechanical issues, crew illness. If he lets Q Queen abort, that's another bomber out of the formation. Fewer bombs on target, less effectiveness. He'll have to explain that to Group Command. They'll ask why he aborted an aircraft for what sounds like minor electrical issues. They'll question his judgment, his toughness. Kellerman makes his decision. Queen, lead. Electrical issues are not mission critical unless they affect flight controls. Continue with formation. Monitor your systems. If situation deteriorates to flight safety level, you are cleared to abort. Reynolds acknowledges. Copy, lead. Continuing mission. But I hear something in Reynolds's voice, hesitation. He doesn't agree with the call. But he's not going to argue with his commanding officer in front of the entire formation. That's not how it works. You follow orders. You trust that command has information you don't. You push forward. I'm sitting in the communications hut thinking about gaps, about the gap between what Reynolds is seeing in his cockpit and what Kellerman is hearing over the radio. About the gap between not mission critical and actually dangerous. about how those gaps grow when everyone is exhausted and the pressure never stops. At 0923 hours, the formation crosses into German airspace. Flak starts immediately. I hear the radio chatter. Aircraft taking damage. One bomber loses an engine. Another takes flak through the tail section. Queen is hit. Mitchell's transmission barely audible through static. Base, Queen, massive electrical failure. Lost all instruments. Engines still running, but no cockpit power. AN/APN-9 system activating automatically. That's what I know. The system is engaging. The experimental navigation system that's supposed to bring damaged bombers home, but it's engaging at the wrong time, over enemy territory, with the crew still aboard, with electrical failures that might interfere with the automatic systems. This is the scenario nobody tested. Captain Ward is on the radio immediately. Queen, this is base. Confirm AN/APN-9 activation. What is your crew status? No response, just static. Ward tries again. Queen, respond. Do you require emergency instructions? Nothing. Major Kellerman's voice. All aircraft, this is lead. Queen has gone silent. I have visual contact. Aircraft appears to be maintaining formation but not responding to radio. Then something I'll never forget. One of the other pilots, I don't know who, breaks in. Lead, I can see into Q Queen's cockpit. Something's wrong. The pilots aren't moving. Kellerman, confirm that report? Sir, I'm looking right at them. Reynolds and Foster. They're slumped forward, not moving. Silence on the radio. Every pilot in the formation is processing what this means. Then Kellerman makes the second critical decision. Queen is experiencing crew incapacitation, possible carbon monoxide leak or oxygen system failure. All aircraft maintain formation. We cannot deviate for individual emergencies. Continue to target. It's the right call by doctrine. You can't break formation to help one damaged aircraft. That endangers everyone. But it means Q Queen continues flying with a crew that might be dead or dying, and nobody can do anything about it. The formation reaches the target, drops bombs, takes more flak. 3 aircraft go down, the rest turn for home. Q Queen turns with them, still in formation, still flying, but still silent. At 11:47 hours over Belgium, Q Queen begins to fall behind, losing altitude gradually. The other bombers continue home. They can't slow down, can't wait. By 12:20 hours, Q Queen is alone, descending, but still flying, still heading west. The AN/APN-9 system is doing exactly what it's designed to do, navigating home, adjusting for wind, maintaining heading, except the crew is gone. We don't know how, we don't know when, but somewhere over Germany, between the flak and the return flight, 10 men cease to exist. At 15:34 hours, Q Queen crosses back into England. RAF tracking stations pick it up, report it to our base. Captain Ward alerts everyone. Inbound B-17, Q Queen, no radio contact, descending on apparent automatic approach vector. All personnel prepare for emergency procedures. We're all standing outside watching the sky, waiting. At 15:47 hours, Q Queen appears, flying low, gear down, flaps extended, perfect landing configuration. It lines up with the main runway, descends, touches down so gently you barely see the wheels make contact, rolls down the runway, slows, stops, engines shut down automatically. We run to the aircraft. Ground crew, medical personnel, me, Captain Ward, everyone. Chief Wright reaches it first, climbs in through the waste door. We're all waiting for his report, expecting wounded, expecting dead, expecting something. Wright's voice over the radio, and I can hear the confusion, the fear. Aircraft is empty. Repeat, aircraft is empty. No crew, no bodies, no signs of evacuation, just empty. We all rush aboard. It's true, every position is empty. But it's not like the crew bailed out. Their parachutes are still here. Harnesses still here, personal items still here. It's like they were removed, surgically, carefully. Impossible. I go to the radio station, put on the headset. The system is still running, still broadcasting on loop. Mitchell's last transmission. Queen to base, experiencing crew incapacitation, requesting immediate. Cut off mid-sentence, recorded automatically by the system, playing over and over. But there's something else on the recording, something underneath the static. Sounds like voices, multiple voices, overlapping. Can't make out words, just voices, and then silence. Captain Ward orders the aircraft sealed. Investigation begins immediately. Army Air Force sends a technical team. They spend 3 days going over every inch of Queen, looking for answers. They find electrical damage, extensive, multiple systems fried. The AN/APN-9 navigation system shows signs of power surge. The theory they settle on? Massive electrical failure caused by flak damage. Power surge through the aircraft systems, possibly created electromagnetic pulse that affected the crew, caused simultaneous incapacitation. Crew succumbed to combination of oxygen deprivation, carbon monoxide, and electrical trauma. But this doesn't explain how they disappeared. The official report states, crew of Queen listed as missing in action, presumed killed during mission. Exact circumstances of loss remain undetermined. Aircraft returned to base via AN/APN-9 automatic navigation system, demonstrating successful operation of new technology under combat conditions. That last line makes me sick. Successful operation. 10 men are gone, but the system worked. That's what matters to command. The technology performed as designed. This is a success story. Queen is repaired, repainted, sent back into service with a new crew. Nobody talks about what happened. Officially, the crew was killed over Germany, and the aircraft returned unmanned, clean, simple. Except it's not simple, because I know what nobody else does. I know the gaps that led to this. The gap between engineering testing and operational deployment. The gap between probably safe and definitely safe. The gap between what crews observe and what command hears. I know that if I'd been aboard, I would have seen the electrical issues earlier, would have pushed harder for abort. Maybe Reynolds would have listened. Maybe we would have turned back before the massive failure.
Or maybe I'd just be one more name on the missing list. I'll never know. 3 weeks after the incident, I'm called to Major Kellerman's office. He looks worse than before, hasn't been sleeping. Corporal Mander, I understand you were originally scheduled for that mission. Yes, sir. You reported sick. The medic grounded you. Yes, sir. That's fortunate. You're a good operator. We'd have missed you. He pauses, looks at papers on his desk. I'm writing my after-action report. Command wants a full account. They want to know if there were warning signs, if anything could have been done differently. I wait, he continues. Mitchell radioed about electrical issues before crossing into enemy airspace. I made the call to continue mission. That's in the record. What's not in the record is that Reynolds requested abort, and I denied it. Sir, you made the call based on available information. I made the call based on wanting to look tough, on not wanting to explain to group why I let another bomber turn back, on thinking that electrical issues weren't serious, and 10 men died because I made that call. This is the moment, the gap closing, where the burden of command meets the reality of outcome. I don't know what to say. Kellerman looks at me. If you had been aboard, what would you have done when the electrical issues started? I think about it. I would have monitored the systems, reported deterioration. If it got bad enough, I would have advised the pilot to abort. But that's easy to say now, sir. In the moment, with flak and fighters and the mission, I don't know if I would have been any different. You got yourself grounded. That suggests you had instincts the rest of us missed. Or I got lucky, sir. Maybe. He goes back to his papers.
The official report will state that the crew was lost due to catastrophic electrical failure, probable enemy action, circumstances beyond control of command decisions. That's what will be filed. That's what will be remembered. Yes, sir. But between us, Corporal, I want you to know I sent those men to die. Not intentionally, but through decisions I made under pressure without complete information, trying to balance mission effectiveness against crew safety. And I chose wrong. I leave his office thinking about accountability, about how the system protects itself. The official report will never mention hesitation, never mention the gap between what Reynolds wanted and what Kellerman ordered, never mention that an experimental system was fielded before full testing. Because acknowledging those things would undermine confidence, would create doubt, would suggest that maybe we don't have everything figured out, and we can't afford doubt, not this close to the end. So we bury the truth. We file reports that are technically accurate but functionally incomplete, and we move on. Major Kellerman flies 8 more missions, then grounds himself. Combat fatigue. He never returns to operational flying. After the war, he resigns his commission. I hear later he became a commercial pilot, flew for TWA for 20 years, never had an accident, never lost a passenger, like he was trying to balance the scales. Queen flies until the end of the war, 37 more missions, different crews. Nobody ever reports anything unusual. The aircraft performs flawlessly, brings every crew home, like it's trying to make up for the one time it couldn't or wouldn't. May 1945, Germany surrenders. The war in Europe is over. Our squadron is stood down. Aircraft are collected for decommissioning or transfer to the Pacific. Queen is selected for scrap, cut up for aluminum, recycled. The ghost fortress dismantled bolt by bolt until nothing remains except reports and photographs and memories. I go home to Pennsylvania, try to forget, can't, because I know I should have died on that mission, and instead 10 other men did. And there's no logic to it, no reason, just gaps, decisions made in moments, instincts followed or ignored, and outcomes that can't be undone. 1987, I'm 62 years old, retired. A military historian contacts me, researching B-17 operations, mentions Queen. There's very little documentation. The after-action reports are vague. Do you remember anything about that mission? I tell him everything, the electrical issues, the denied abort request, the experimental navigation system, the crew that vanished, the gaps in the chain of command. He listens, takes notes, then says, "This is fascinating, but it's not in any official records. Everything you're describing, the command decisions, the system issues, the denied abort, none of that appears in the documentation." Because they buried it, filed reports that were technically true but missed the real story. Why? Because acknowledging the truth would mean admitting that 10 men died due to preventable failures, pressure on commanders, rushed deployment of untested systems, communication gaps. Nobody wanted to say that out loud, so they called it enemy action, circumstances beyond control, and moved on. The historian looks troubled. This changes the narrative significantly. It suggests systemic issues rather than isolated tragedy. Yes, that's exactly what it suggests, and that's exactly why it was never documented. Can I include this in my research? I think about it, about loyalty, about protecting the institution, about whether truth matters more than institutional reputation. Yes, include it, but understand, I'm not attacking anyone. Major Kellerman made the best decision he could with the information he had. Captain Ward was following protocol. The engineers who designed the AN/APN-9 were trying to save lives. Everyone was doing their job under impossible pressure. But the system failed, and 10 men died. And we need to acknowledge that, not to assign blame, but to learn, to prevent it from happening again. The historian's book is published in 1989, includes my account, creates some controversy. Veterans groups debate whether it's appropriate to criticize wartime decisions decades later. Some historians question my memory. Others defend the account as important corrective to sanitized official histories. I receive letters, some angry, some grateful. One from Kellerman's daughter. She says her father never talked about the war, but near the end of his life he mentioned Q Queen. Said it was the one mission he wished he could redo. Said he'd made the wrong call. Said he carried that weight every day. She thanks me for telling the story, says it helps her understand her father's silence. I write back, tell her that her father was a good officer who faced impossible choices, that history is full of decisions made in moments that haunt people for lifetimes, that her father's willingness to acknowledge his error took more courage than making the original decision. That's the real story of Q Queen, not supernatural mystery, not ghostly phenomenon, but human beings making decisions under crushing pressure, in systems designed to move faster than complete information allows, creating gaps where tragedy finds purchase. The B-17 that landed with no crew wasn't empty because of some unexplainable event. It was empty because small failures cascaded. Electrical systems pushed into service before full testing. Command decisions prioritizing mission effectiveness over individual aircraft concerns. Communication gaps between what crews observe and what leadership hears. None of these failures were individually catastrophic, but together, compounded, they created the conditions where 10 men could vanish and an aircraft could fly home alone. This is Corporal Mander's account. The gaps I saw, the decisions I witnessed, the tragedy that could have included me. I'm 98 years old now. Most of the men who flew with me are gone. Soon, I'll be gone too. But this story needs to survive. Not as accusation, not as condemnation, but as reminder that systems are only as good as the people operating them, that pressure creates gaps, that speed without caution invites disaster, that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is say, wait, that courage includes admitting error, that institutional reputation matters less than truth. The Ghost Fortress wasn't haunted by spirits. It was haunted by decisions, by the weight of choices made in moments, by the gap between what should have happened and what did. Remember Q Queen. Remember her crew. Remember that behind every mysterious disappearance, every unexplained event, every ghost story, there are human beings making decisions that ripple forward through time. And sometimes the greatest mystery isn't what happened. It's why we choose to forget. This is Corporal Mander's hidden archives, the accounts they classified, the gaps they papered over. The truth that survived because someone chose to remember. Thank you for listening.